the FNAF movie was fantastic. It was just an awesome Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It was good.
Obviously, it doesn't follow the FNAF game lore exactly, instead taking a similar route as the SOLVES books, of using similar characters and concepts, but making it a slightly different story. However, the movie being a different story from the games doesn't make it irrelevant to them. Midnight Motorist, also known as the Other Night minigame, has been an extremely confusing part of FNAF that no theorist can really seem to agree on. We know that Scott Cawthon makes new installments to the franchise, in part to clear up past confusions. Things like the secret code and sister location clearing up that the Bite of 83 and 87 are different. The same could be for the FNAF movie. And what better thing to clear up than Midnight Motorist? It makes sense for that to be the thing cleared up, given that it was very unlikely for Scott to give us a movie that just straight up tells all the game's lore.
Also, as a quick side note, I just want to point out that this guy in the movie is literally wearing a shirt with the Midnight Motorist minigame on it. So, yeah. Scott didn't just forget about it. He put it in the movie directly.
But how exactly does this clear up Midnight Motorist? What does the FNAF movie tell us about this strange minigame? The movie starts with Mike driving home after attacking some kid's dad at his job. Midnight Motorist starts with a man driving home. With the later that night name, the color of the car, the rain, and now the movie parallel, it's fairly safe to assume that the man is William, driving home after killing Charlie, since Charlie gets murdered by William Afton at Fredbear's, where he works, on a rainy day, before driving away in a purple car. Even William in this movie is dressed up in yellow instead of purple, addressing the whole color controversy, where people argued the Midnight Motorist driver could not be William, given that William is shown as purple in the other minigames. I guess for the reasoning behind this is that Scott didn't want the driver's identity to be obvious, so he made it purple's complementary color instead of just straight up purple. So, Midnight Motorist starts with William driving home after attacking someone at his job, just like Mike. Once he gets home, Mike goes into his house and stops to talk to the babysitter, who is watching television. In Midnight Motorist, William goes inside of his house and has a chat with someone in front of the TV. This means that the person is most likely just a babysitter rather than a family member like Mrs. Afton or Michael. Afterwards, we see Mike head towards his sister, Abby's door, which is closed. He opens it and attempts to get Abby to come eat dinner. The part here that connects to Midnight Motorist is a bit less obvious, given that Mike is considerably nicer to his sister than William is to his child, and Mike is even able to open Abby's door, but it is still there. The connection is still there. William tries to get his child to come out of his room, but to no avail. Mike tries to get Abby to come out of her room, but to no avail. Even if the motives are different, the overall actions are the same. That isn't even the only connection between these two parts, though. In the movie, Mike is the legal guardian of Abby. He is considerably older than her, and we even see Vanessa mistake Abby for being Mike's daughter. In Midnight Motorist, William's child seems to be the only one in the house. He is more directly their father, yes, but it is still a parallel. So what is important about this connection specifically? Well, it tells us exactly who William's kid who ran away in Midnight Motorist is. Abby has a dead brother. Michael has a dead brother. Also, note that he/him pronouns are used for the runaway, showing us that the kid is definitely a boy, which really gives us only two Afton kids to choose from, since it rules Elizabeth out whether she's alive or not. The movie confirms to us that the crying child is already dead. the runaway is not the crying child because he died, then it has to be Michael. The FNAF movie even explains to us the animatronic footprints outside of Michael's window. As we know, the single pair of three-toed footprints has been heavily debated over the years, but now we know who they belong to. Much later in the movie, during the 5th night at Freddy's, Golden Freddy goes to visit Abby. He is able to just apparate in her home, and that same teleporting ability is shown when he leaves Abby at the entrance of Freddy's. This lines up to what we see Golden Freddy doing in the game, where he just teleports inside of the office instead of walking/running up to it like the other animatronics. But we do know that Golden Freddy is still able to interact with the real world when he is present invisible. He kills Abby's aunt and makes the taxi car weighed down. This shows us that, despite his teleporting abilities, he is still physically there, meaning the Fredbear animatronic could have teleported to outside of Michael's window and left footprints from standing there. The rain wouldn't bother the Springlock suit since no one was alive inside, and the animatronic is moving because of a ghost instead of circuit boards that could possibly short out in the rain. Golden Freddy lures Abby out of her house, basically making her run away to Freddy's. Golden Freddy does the same kind of thing in Midnight Motorist. He lures Michael out of his house by standing outside his window before disappearing again. It is possible that Fredbear even reappeared further down the path to guide Michael somewhere, though that is just speculation. Where Michael runs away to exactly is a bit unclear, but I do think the movie could be suggesting that he goes to Fredbear since Abby runs away to Freddy's. Why is also unclear, but I have some speculative guesses. Since the crying child is haunting Fredbear's, it makes sense that he might have witnessed Charlie's death. Perhaps unsure of who to turn to, the crying child turns to the only person he knows who might be able to help. Michael also might be one of the few people he actually remembers, too. This particular detail is shown to us with the whole "it's me" thing. Clearly the crying child recognizes Michael as at least someone individual and important, as opposed to most of the other animatronics who instead just act malicious around all adults regardless of who they are. The crying child might have forgotten most things, but he at least has some recollection of Michael, which would make him an obvious choice to go to when the crying child is in distress. And I hear what you're saying. Why would the crying child want help from his brother who killed him? And yeah, I'll admit, it's a bit strange. To want to get help from someone who was never too keen on protecting or helping him before is odd. The dialogue we get from Michael before his brother dies is important here, though. After his brother dies, Michael feels really bad, and he tells the crying child how sorry he is. Even for a ghost who forgets most things, it might make sense for the crying child to remember most vividly what happened the night before he died. There's also the possibility of the crying child being able to observe Michael's change, at least to some extent. I know the crying child says he's basically not able to sense anything, but if he was aware enough of his surroundings to go home, it's definitely at least a possibility. Either way, the crying child would be scared and desperate for help if he saw his own dad kill Charlie, who was likely a friend of his in one way or another. That's so in character for him, and so he would obviously be desperate for any help, even if it's from a brother who hates him. Abby follows Fredbear because she sees him as her friend. Michael follows Fredbear because... Wait, does this mean Michael knows that Fredbear is possessed? Perhaps he didn't know that until that night. Then again, according to William, this isn't Michael's first time running away. People often point to William saying that he's run off to that place again, meaning that Michael is once again running away to a spot he often goes. This is often assumed to be the dirt mound/unmarked grave, but don't worry, I've thought of that. First of all, I want to point out that the unmarked grave probably isn't the crying child, given that he died in a hospital, and that kind of ensures that he got some kind of proper body disposal. It also probably isn't Elizabeth, even if she is dead by this point, since she got put inside of Circus Baby, which could very easily have been her permanent grave. Also, it wouldn't really make sense for William to make child-killing animatronics before he killed anyone, or even knew what Remnant was. So then, who could be buried there? My guess is Mrs. Afton, and this is once again backed up by the FNAF movie. Abby's mom died. If Michael's mom was dead too, that would explain her absence. It is commonly speculated that Mrs. Afton died via suicide, or at least a staged suicide, aka, murder. And either way, it would make sense why she got buried in some random spot in the woods instead of a more proper burial, considering the stigma around suicide and, of course, the secrecy of murder. If Michael is in mourning over losing his mom and brother, it makes sense that he would go to his mom's grave to be comforted. That's what kids do when they are sad. They go to their moms for comfort. William is assuming that Michael is going to the grave again since he's been there so many times in the past. But I think there's an important detail here we are ignoring. Michael isn't at the grave. Bear in mind, William is speeding home. There's not a big window for Michael to run to the grave in between his father visiting it and his father getting home. This implies that Michael left before William even got to the grave and went somewhere else entirely. William does not know for sure where Michael is. He only assumes that he has to run to that grave, since it is what Michael has done in the past. That doesn't mean Michael is actually at that place. Also, keep in mind that William is probably drunk out of his mind. The man just sped on the wrong side of the road home after killing a kid and immediately went to what is likely a bar, given that there's a bouncer outside and heading home, to abuse his son. He's not going to consider things like how much time Michael had to run away. He probably didn't even notice the animatronic footprints. So yeah, Michael could have totally gone to Fredbear's. Like I stated before, Michael likely did not know Fredbear was possessed until that night, and we have the movie once again as evidence. When Abby sees Fredbear, she assumes it's Freddy. She knows Freddy is haunted, yes, but she didn't seem to know about Golden Freddy. Similarly, Michael doesn't know about Golden Freddy's possession until that night when Fredbear shows up outside his window. So, Michael follows Fredbear because he sees him as his brother, and Abby follows Fredbear because she sees him as a friend. Nice. Now that we have all the points figured out, let's put them together into a nice little theoretical story, starting with William's point of view. To say it's been a rough night for William would be an understatement. After spending a good part of the day at the bar, Junior's, drinking away his problems, he comes to a sickening conclusion. His son is dead. His wife is dead. The only family he has left is a shitty disappointment of a son who keeps running away and a daughter who never listens to him. But his business partner, Henry Emily, God, is the perfect family. His kids, Sammy and Charlie, are still alive. They are good kids. They behave properly in the way that kids should. It was unfair. Why did Henry get the perfect family? Henry wasn't better than William. So, he hatches a drunken and emotionally driven, horrible and despicable plan. A plan to make things fair again. For some reason or another, likely related to drinking too much, William is kicked out of Junior's, so he takes the opportunity. Hopping in his car, he heads over to Fredbear's family diner, rushing through the pouring rain. To his luck, Charlotte Emily is stuck outside, locked out in the back of the restaurant, in the downpour and soaking wet. Kids inside were snickering at the prank they had managed to pull on the owner's daughter, while Charlie stood by the window crying. William leaves his car and kills Charlie, leaving her body in the alleyway behind Fredbear's and driving back. He even has a good alibi, seeing as he hasn't clocked into work all day. Along the way home, he makes 2 stops. One at his wife's grave. Again, it's been an emotional night. And another at Junior's for another drink, where he is promptly refused entry. Once home, he stops by the babysitter, who tells him to go easy on his kid, but ultimately avoids the interfamilial conflict since it's not really their job. Ignoring the babysitter since, again, it's none of their business. William heads to Michael's room, in the mood for being a shitty dad, I guess. But Michael's door is locked, and he's not opening up despite William's yelling and pounding. William checks the window outside, planning to get in through there, but he finds it's already been used. The glass is broken. Michael's run away again. Probably to go see his mom's grave again. Who was he to disobey his father? He would be sorry when he got back. William was never the best father in the world, but lately he seemed to be getting just worse and worse. He blamed Michael for the death of his other son, and to be fair, it was his fault, even if it was an accident. Michael blamed himself too, which meant that William's yelling, neglect, rude comments, and possibly even physical violence really wasn't necessary. Michael had already beat himself up over it enough without his dad adding to the pile. That's why Michael decided to try and spend as much time as he could either outside of the house or locked in his room. Hurricane was a small enough place, and the death of his brother was a big enough story that Michael had a hard time having people who wanted him to hang around. So even if he did manage to leave the house, it was almost always just to visit. He missed her so much, but being next to her grave meant that he could at least pretend she was still there to comfort him about the death of herself and her son. And yeah, he could technically go to Elizabeth about it, but she was also mad at him for the death of her little brother, so going to her for sympathy or understanding just wasn't the best idea. So, dear dead mommy it was. Tonight, Michael had been planning on going out. It was raining, and today had been so taxing already, he was just hoping to dissolve into nothingness in his room. Something was outside, right in front of his window. Was that Fredbear? It had to be, but how did he get out here? Why? It's me. It's Michael's little brother. His dead brother that he killed. His dead brother was in the Fredbear animatronic. The Fredbear animatronic that killed him. The Fredbear animatronic that was outside Michael's window. The bear motions for Michael to come closer, to come outside. Desperate to reach his poor brother, Michael breaks the glass on the window and heads outside. Fredbear disappears, but Michael knows where to go. Fredbear's family diner. When Michael gets there, he finds out about Charlie's death. Whether he finds the body or not is unclear, but it's not really important to Midnight Motorist specifically, so for now, that's where the story ends.